Ronda Rousey, she continues to be like the most interesting part about this fight. There's a lot of things interesting about this Gina Carano fight, but MVP put out this video preview today, kind of this behind the scenes look at a photo shoot at Netflix involving Rousey and Gina Carano. And we're going to just play a series of clips here. The first half is when she was on the Jim Rome show over the weekend, further talking about the negotiations with the UFC. And then from this video that was released today from MVP. And it really does paint the picture that Ronda Rousey is not just looking at this as some one-off fight, but a much bigger, a bigger fight with the UFC, and she is choosing her side, and it's with MVP.
They didn't want to set a precedent of giving me the guaranteed money that I deserve, because once I raise that tide, it lifts all the boats. And they just made a $7.7 billion deal at Paramount. So it's in their best interest, actually, not to put on the best fights possible, but to spend as little as money as possible so that they can keep it. You know, Dana's now legally obligated to maximize shareholder value. It's not just about, proving the concept of fighting and putting on the best fights possible and proving that this is a sport to be taken seriously. I think now that now that they've sold the company, it's kind of out of Dana's hands, unfortunately, and now it's falling onto Hunter Campbell and UFC Corp, where they don't care about putting on the best fights possible. They care about putting on the most cost effective fights possible. So it no longer made sense for me to go over there, because they didn't want to pay us the money that we deserve, because then for the rest of the time of the deal, they're going to have to pay everybody else more. And so then I decided to look elsewhere. It's a dream fight and a super fight and everything, but I feel like the story and everything behind it is not just this fight, but a lot of it is MVP versus the UFC. And that's where I'm going to fucking go real hard in the trenches. We're helping them because they're suffering from a lack of competition. And they can't just make a class action lawsuit every couple of years at cost of doing business. And so I'm really trying to help Dana out. And if anyone has been groomed to be his apprentice, it's been me. And I think I'd be the most favorite adversary he's ever had. So
I love it.
So to recap, Ronda Rousey went to the UFC and she said, like, I'm going to do this, but I want like a great deal for this. Like, she was not going to give some discount to the UFC. And they started the negotiations before the Paramount deal, where they were still in the pay-per-view business. And she said Dana came back to her with an incredible deal that if she could generate the level of buys that she did at her peak, which quite frankly were like her last two fights all eclipsed 1 million buys. I don't know in this current marketplace, but this fight would be big with the UFC muscle behind it. Regardless, the deal comes back and then they strike the Paramount deal. They're out of the pay-per-view business. So like, this is no longer like incentive based with that you do this amount of buys and this is how you will be paid. And so she said, well, I just want like a flat fee then of X amount, whatever it was she was asking for. And that's where they would not go for it. And she was not going to come in at some bargain. Instead, took it to Netflix. And I can't imagine how much her and Gina Carano are getting for this fight. Like, it's possible this could be the most that Ronda has ever made for a fight, which would be quite something. And Netflix is going to get a ton of attention for this fight, as they are another fight that we will get to momentarily. But it's really interesting to see Ronda take this position and the way of which she's kind of saying like Dana White is sort of like a figurehead at this point. Like, this is like, to me, if I'm Ronda Rousey, I'm using the term cost-effective fighting anytime I'm discussing the UFC. And that's how you paint them, cost-effective fighting. And we are putting on the fights the fans want, and are not going to be limited by profit margins. And I think that that's kind of where she's going at it. But she said, like, it's out of Dana's hands at this point. It's like, he's not the one that is running the show anymore. It's like, now it is the larger TKO entity that has to make profit margins every quarter, and that is their first concern, not you, the fan. And it seems like that's going to be a big part of this lead up. And it's, she's not throwing shade toward Dana necessarily, but it is like the UFC is not the UFC she viewed and fought for a decade ago.
I think it's a really brilliant marketing strategy on her behalf. And MVPs, she's being instructed to, go to the media to speak this way. But I could see Ronda herself very much like, whether or not you might consider it strategy or like, the sense she gives off in these sort of interviews is that she's not a bullshitter. And it's similar to Dana in a way. Like, at least like she comes across like she's being very genuine. And certainly when you hear her speak about things like, class action lawsuits and things like that, I mean, it sounds like a very unfiltered sort of like fighter's answer about the current state of, the MMA and really combat sports. So I just find it incredibly refreshing. And I think it's the exact antidote to like people who might be frustrated by like this incredibly, financially driven company that is TKO. This is an incredibly refreshing, type of speak from a promoter, even if it is in its own way a marketing strategy.
Yeah, and remember, in this Kung Lee suit, Ronda Rousey got an incredible figure from that whole deal. Like, she had some massive fights during that period as well. So it's like it's not even the case of necessarily like this is not some. Neither of these women are in a position where they need to be doing this, but I'm sure that they are commanding like a ton from Netflix. But like the idea that this is some kind of cash grab for these fighters is really not the case. And it's something that, it's obviously they were compelled to do this fight, and Netflix is going to pay them very, very handsomely for it.
Yeah, as they should. I mean, so I guess though we're supposed to infer from her comments that UFC is interested in profits. MVP and Netflix not necessarily interested in profits. Are we to believe that?
Well, I think that they are going.
Is this a money losing show?
Well, we don't know what Netflix is paying MVP. Like, they're probably getting an incredible licensing fee for this that is going to more than compensate them. I don't think they're going to be running this one at a loss. February on the Post Wrestling Cafe, we continue our review of Season 2 of WWE Unreal, including a big look at Seth Rollins' fake injury, which culminated in his appearance at SummerSlam. We're going to be looking back at Shinya Hashimoto with a special career retrospective on Rewind Away, plus a review of Extreme Rules 2011, as John Cena announces to the WWE audience that Osama bin Laden has been compromised to a permanent end. We'll also take a look at New Beginning in Osaka, TNA No Surrender, and new members can take advantage of a 7-day free trial. Go to postwrestlingcafe.com and jump on board in February.